Yeah, Temperance, she's always had a weakness for sins of the flesh, and she tries so hard, she works so hard every day to make sure that nobody knows how horny she is all the time. And she does the work of the foundling children in order to atone for her clitoris.
She's punishing herself for her horns.
Yes.
I'm Melody Carlisle.
And I'm Sabrina Bradley.
And this is Heaving Bosoms. This is the podcast where best friends recap romance novels and other kissing media that makes us swoon, snark, and refills our cups.
Whether you've read the book or are coming in blind, we'll lay bare every delicious scene and revel in the tropes and subgenres that make romance amazing.
All right, listener, strap in and strap on. Headphones are highly recommended.
All right, Sabrina, I had legal dreams last night.
The fuck does that mean?
Legal dreams, like being in an ongoing court case, and it involved a lot of powdered wigs. Here's the thing, listener. We have two pieces of business to get to before anything else. However, I have discovered a new Times. We're not in England Times, okay?
Is this wig times?
No, it's Dickens Times. It's a very specific Dickens Times. It made me think of Bleak House. Charles Dickens, okay? This is the rabbit hole that I've gone down. I started thinking about Dickens Times, Charles Dickens Times. Then I started thinking about Bleak House. Then I started thinking about, generally like the court of the chancery and whatever. And like, I know that Charles Dickens was a very important novelist and that his societal critiques in his novels did a lot to help the world, but fuck, Dickens Times is hard. What?
Well, so this book is set in the 1780s.
Dickens Times.
1780s.
Dickens Times. No.
I was thinking to myself, just because I was curious, right? We can call it Dickens Times, but I was like, I thought Charles Dickens was in the 1800s. He was.
Yeah.
He was 1812 to 1870. But the most important thing that I just found out.
What?
Charles Dickens and I share a birthday.
Okay, all right, hold on. I was talking about societal critiques, etc., and you're coming in with same birthday?
Yep, I sure am.
All right.
Nobody ever has the same birthday as me, and so I'm excited.
All right.
Okay, but anyway, societal critiques. Yeah. Go be.
No, I'm just saying
important.
I'm just
and
saying
shit.
It's not. I am not important, and I know that he is important. But like, fuck, dude, Dickens Times is hard. Like, if there's a street urchin, if there's an Oliver Twist in there, if there's like a half-starved man in a gutter, you might be in Dickens Times. Oh man, if your heroine pulls a babe out of the arms of the corpse of its mother in the first chapter, you might be in Dickens Times, okay?
I would wholeheartedly agree with it. You're right. This is not a year.
No.
This is a specific vibe.
Yes. In
Yeah.
England.
In England, because there's also America Dickens Times.
But
But
But that's like a whole different thing.
Yeah.
We'd have to come up with a totally different name because Charles Dickens wasn't writing about us. Listen, y'all, it's so I had Bleak House dreams last night. That's
Melody,
what I had.
You
I
realize
was stuck in the court of the chancery.
You realize, hang on, whoa, we need to, just because I'm in an analytical mood right now. You realize that England, I showed you what I spent a lot of hours yesterday.
We cannot.
I know, but of course I'm in an analytical mood.
Of course.
you realize that America Times is not the American equivalent of England Times, right? It's American England Times when you're talking about that kind of. America Times is America like the Wild West, which means France or America Dickens Times does not, it doesn't matter that it's America or France. I'm just saying France because we did Spy Master's Lady.
Yeah.
It's still Dickens Times. It's just in a different country.
No, see, America Times is very specifically in old-timey America, doesn't matter when, like right near a war or like in Reconstruction, Wild West. That's America Times.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, okay, all right. And then England Times is anything set in England, all right? Especially if it's old-timey. And now Dickens Times is just stuck in the dregs of poverty.
Dickens Times is the Sebastian of England Times.
Man, and except I like Sebastian and I don't like Dickens Times.
I don't like Dickens Times. Dickens Times makes me sad.
And like I know that technically a lot of his books end up with a quasi HEA, you know? But like the journey to get there is rough. And what about Lady Deadlock?
I have to ask, have you actually ever read a Charles Dickens novel?
Yeah.
You have? I have not.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Justice for Lady Deadlock.
So who's Lady Deadlock?
So she's the character in Bleak House. She's like, for most of the book, you look at her as like just an upper crust lady, a bored upper crust lady. But you find out that she has secrets, and she is what I would do. And unfortunately, she dies from exposure on the grave of her dead lover. So that's rough. But she is worried that her secret's going to come out. She finds out her secret is going to come out, and then she underestimates the love that her husband has for her, and she decides to cast herself out instead of maybe having one conversation and finding out the husband would have been fine with it. And then dies of exposure on a grave.
Interestingly enough, that's the exact opposite of what happens in this book.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, listen. But we have business to attend to beforehand. First of all, Nemesis Watch 2024. What's happening?
You remember how last episode and in reality just a couple days ago was a nice person?
Yeah, and you returned book 3 and book 5. And then you lamented returning book 3. And now we know why.
I did in fact say, I feel like I prophesied myself. Like this was like I put this into the universe like an idiot. I said, watch, I just returned book 3 and I'm immediately going to get book 2.
Yeah, your nemesis is going to give you book 2 back. And then within 12 hours.
That was a night recording that we did. I woke up the next morning. And when I opened my phone and looked at my notifications, my Lord and Spy Master had come through.
Yeah.
Enraged Melody.
So now, do you have to wait for a 21-day hold on the 3rd book? Is that what's happening?
14-day hold, yeah. Although, I'm toxic again, because guess what, listener? This is my villain origin story. I have given up on being a kind person, and I'm going to be as toxic as I want with these audiobooks. That's not true. This is going to last for approximately 2 weeks. Until
you forget. We know.
Until I forget, yeah. So what I did in fact do, it's so much worse, Melody. Actually, it's not. It's not. Because, so book 4 and 5, I renewed my hold immediately. I have them for like 12 more days now, right? I was like, yep. Give them to me. I don't give a shit who's waiting on these books. I have them. What I did do is about 20% into Wicked Intentions, I did go check out every single book in Maiden Lane.
Me too. Almost.
Every single one was available. And I was like, mine. There's no
I didn't have all of them, but I got all the ones I was interested in. Yeah. And then I have to go to Audible for another one.
How peaceful it must be to be somebody.
It really is.
Who can just...
No, it's great over here.
Disrespect.
It's not a disrespect. Order. I am the reader. They are the author. Good job, author. Now I get to be a reader however I want to be a reader.
A monster.
I don't need to read a book I'm not interested in just because somebody wrote it in the middle of a series. Why would I do that? That's so silly.
Fascinating. You fascinate me.
Well, yeah, so here I am complaining about Dickens Times, and then immediately, second book, third book, fifth book.
It's not going to get better. Melody, I can't wait to tell you my unhinged theories.
Okay, I'm excited. Because we're not going to be able to talk about it, listener, but there's like a whole setup with the sister named Silence for book 3.
Yeah, we're just not even going to... We're going to skip all of it.
It's a whole deal. Yeah, we're going to skip all of it, but just know that she gets ruined by an Irish pirate, and he is the hero in book 3. So... You thought it was going to be a second chance marriage romance, didn't you?
My suspicion, my note is literally when we meet Silence and she's talking about her husband, I was like, "Oh, this man's going to die. This is too angsty of a this is too angsty of a book already for him not to die or leave her." As we learn, like I wouldn't have been shocked if he left her as we read this book, but I was like, "There's no fucking Silence is definitely getting a book, and there's no way it's William."
Nope. It is that rat fuck.
That was
who ruins her on purpose.
My suspicion was that she was going to end up with Charming Mickey.
Without actually, like, giving her an orgasm or anything.
And I thought it was unhinged, but now you've shown me the... Wow. Ooh, that's a good track record. I can't wait to tell you my other theory.
Ooh. Okay, listen. Okay. The other piece of business we have is we have some gorgeous, wonderful patrons to shout out because we're so thankful for everybody who's been part of the community for years and everybody who's been joining recently. So, hey, welcome and thanks to Nerdy Spinster and Holly B,
Trista M and Gio B,
Natalie W and Ba K,
Kaya H and Jill W,
Stephanie L and Rebecca P,
Erin and Rachel,
and Deborah B.
Thank you so much
for being part of Heaving Bosoms, a Patreon. And later on this month, we are having an author hang with Elizabeth Stevens of Very Mates.
I'm so excited. Wonder. It's August 23rd, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
And she's got that Omegaverse, this new Omegaverse deliciousness that she's been writing. Like, it is too much.
And we haven't, so she and I are still in talks about what exactly fun thing we're all going to do. Usually, so the first two has been trivia, right? Since we've introduced this new version of Author Hangs, we've done trivia. And this time we're talking about maybe giving either an online escape room or Pictionary a shot. So it might be a hot mess and I can't wait.
Yeah, and it's like, it ends up being just like an icebreaker to get everybody talking so that, you know, people aren't nervous to talk to the author.
And just having fun.
Because we want actual interaction, and just like hanging out and being great.
This is an author hang, not an author interview. You're allowed to ask questions. Like, you're welcome to ask them questions if you want to ask them questions. But, like, it's just
don't get me wrong.
Out.
I asked M.A. Wardell so many questions. Once I got access to his brain.
You interrogated that poor man.
I didn't. He loved it. He loved it. He was there for every moment.
Oh, my God. It was wonderful. So many. I love the way his brain works when he's putting together a book. Yeah. And like researching the book.
And the thought and care that he puts into everything is just so wonderful. Anyway, so that's later on this month. I'm pretty sure we're also having a watch party because those are just like extra fun hang times. And there's a bunch going on in the Patreon.
Yeah, because last month we watched Pirates of the Caribbean. The poll results are in. And so we haven't watched it yet as of recording this episode.
In our times.
But in your times, we have watched Pirates of the Caribbean, and I can't wait for the snarky banter that was involved there.
I'm excited. I'm excited. Okay, now we're going to get into this fucking book. Because, listen, I loved Book, but I was so mad at Book the whole time. This hero felt like a Dickens Times Christian Grey, kinda. You know? He did! He's a Sebastian, don't get me wrong. He's a Sebastian. He cannot be touched because it hurts him. If anybody touches him, by the end of the book, the fucking heroine cures him of the touch situation.
Oh my God.
He loves BDSM and he thinks there's something wrong with him for it. So anyway, he can't be touched and he gets cured of it by Love and the heroine, etc. She does tie him up to cure him of it, which felt dicey for me, but we're good. It all worked out.
I had
So he's constantly psychoanalyzing himself, trying to figure out what's wrong with him and why he likes to tie up his sexual partners and blindfold them. Dude, there's nothing wrong with you. You just like a thing.
Granted, this was also in 1737, so like
I know.
It's not like they were talking about. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but it's also
tracks.
like not like there weren't actual sex clubs in that time as well.
Well, I mean, obviously they talk about like all of the brothels and stuff. Like there are sex workers in this time that their specialty is being tied up and blindfolded.
That's right. Okay. So we open up and our do-gooder, Nell? What is her
Temperance.
name? Temperance is much better. Oh, yeah. If every sibling in the family has a virtue name, you might be in Dickens Times. But you might also be in a werewolf book by Talia Hibbert.
But hang on, why is it only Temperance and Silence and then the rest of the dudes are like Concord, Winter?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's just the ladies.
All the ladies are virtues names.
Are we shocked?
And Temperance and Silence. Also, her dad was a brewer, so like Temperance? Question mark? Cool your jets, man.
I hadn't put that together, but that's hilarious.
Yeah, look out for your own income. Jesus.
Throw that rock, sir, in
That's
that
right.
glass house.
Yeah, how dare you. So anyway, she's out in the middle of bad streets of London. In this one, it's not Whitechapel. It is St. Giles, which I'm sure was a real... Don't at me. Anyway, they're out there and they are there to literally pull a sickly baby out of the corpse arms of its mother, who is only 15.
Yep.
And may have died of exposure or whatever.
Yes, because Temperance runs... So her beer brewer father... had a charity home for foundling. Oh God, what was even the name of it?
Foundling an unfortunate child.
Talk about a Dickens
house.
Times home name.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So he was like invested in taking care of the sad children of St. Giles.
Yeah. And he mostly did that with the elbow grease of his girl children and some of his boy children. And then they had a super rich dude who helped him out, a patron, for a really long time, like years and years and years. This one guy funded their endeavor. And then he died very suddenly. And
there ain't shit in that will.
Yeah, he didn't provide for the house in his will because he wasn't thinking he was going to die.
Do you want to know what my thought about that was?
What? Tell me.
It was intentional. He was patroning because they talk about how it's fashionable in this time to support charity. But once you're dead, it doesn't help you.
Interesting. So anyway, they need a new, not proprietor, patron.
Mm-hmm.
And they bring this baby back and everybody's like, it's really dangerous out there right now. And she's like, yes, but babies freeze to death. So I couldn't not go.
Mm-hmm.
And they have this teeny baby and she's not super well. She's really weak.
Mary Hope.
God. Okay. Also.
All the names. Jimmy Timbox or whatever. His name is Johnny
Joseph. Everybody is a Joseph. Every
boy my God. Mary and Joseph.
And every girl is a Mary.
Oh my God. I did not put that together.
Like Mary Morning, Mary Evening, Mary Broadstroke.
Joseph Tin Box, because when they got him in the home, he had a tin box attached to his wrist.
Yeah. So the only identifying factor that each kid gets is a significant thing for when they were found or brought to them.
You know what it is?
What is it?
They're playing that social media thing where it's like, your urchin in Dickens Times name is Joseph.
When you woke up.
Is when you look to your left, the first thing that you notice. That's what it is.
You're right.
The origin. Yeah. This is the origin story of that.
So they need money. And it's bad. Like, they're behind in rent and all of that. And when she was out, she saw, like, a scary man hunched over a prone man.
Who was bleeding?
Yeah, he was bleeding. And her servant girl, her maid, is
Nell.
like, her name is Nell. Mm-hmm. There we go. That's where I got it from. She's like, oh, don't look upon that man. He is a bad man. Oh, he's a bad one. And she's like, okay, man, but he is an aristocrat. Mm-hmm. So then she's about to go have her tea, her one fucking cup of tea that she gets to have by herself in the quiet with maybe a little bit of sugar.
And she feels so guilty about that sugar. She still does it. So, like, a woman after my own heart.
Yeah. But she walks into her tiny study and this man is sitting in her chair. He has broken into the house because the back door was barred. God damn it. He tries to be like, I feel like it wasn't. And she's like, don't play with me. Anyway, he has a proposition for her because he knows that they're in arrears in the rent and all the business.
Ironically, his name is Lord Care.
Yeah, how was that spelled? Was it Kerr?
No, it was Caire.
Oh, okay, yeah. Anyway, he is a bad boy. He's got a reputation.
He's got that silver hair even though he's young.
Yeah, that's hot.
He's got blue eyes. Mm-hmm. He's tall and broad. And she walks into that sitting room which, oh my God, the image I had of the sitting room was the most depressing thing in the entire world.
It's all depressing. No, any adaptation of this book has to be filmed with a gray filter on it for the soot and misery. Mm-hmm. That just is everywhere.
Absolutely.
In this Dickens Times setting.
Except at the couple of aristocratic things, that's where it would be like gilded.
Yeah, gross.
As just such an extreme difference between
punch everyone in their fucking faces.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
So he has this proposition for her. He needs a guide for St. Giles, basically, because it's like any small insulated part of a city and everybody knows each other and they don't want to talk to outsiders. And so he needs a guide to help him basically get in with the locals and know where to go to get some information.
To find someone.
He won't tell her what he's looking for.
Oh, that's right.
So the agreement is that she will help guide him. And this made me laugh so hard. Fucking Temperance. This would have been a much shorter book in this situation, but she is basically like, I will do that. In exchange, you need to help me find a patron. You need to take me into society so I can find a new patron for the home. Also, I need living expenses for the home for now until we find a patron. And he looks at her and he's like, I could just be your patron. And she was like, no, I need somebody a little bit more respectable. And I was like, Temperance,
money is fucking money.
You're worried about 3 grains of sugar right now, Temperance. It is Dickens Times.
Yeah, you haven't had beef in 3 weeks for any of the kids. You barely have gruel for those kids. They don't have shoes, Temperance. Okay? It's fucking cold out there.
We find out that they do have shoes, but they owe a debt to the fucking shoe man.
Cobbler, yeah, whatever, man.
Cobbler, that's the word.
Temperance is a nutter butter right now.
Shit, well, and this was really interesting looking back at it, and I hadn't put it because I only read the book once. And it's interesting, her character at the very end of this book, when she starts realizing certain things about herself and acknowledging them, right now, oh my God, that is exactly it. Like, I hadn't really put together that she has a lot, like, an unhealthy amount of pride. And
puritanical
pride, yeah. And, like, that's it. She is willing to go without for 7 and 20 children.
Oh my God, temperance.
Because literally, okay, listener, this foundling home, they have like 27 kids at this foundling home. 28 now that this baby that they just saved.
Yeah.
All of the boys sleep in one bedroom that has like 4 beds in it, and all of them share these beds. There's like 3 or 4 to a bed. And then all of the girls share a room in the exact same way. Temperance. You have so many mouths to feed, except the fucking patronage.
And like she claims later on to Lady Hero, who is the second book, don't worry, that they could care for so many more children if they had more monies. And like, there's no shortage of Oliver Twists out there. Temperance, okay?
Don't worry. With more money, you could fucking buy the babies that the asshole that we're gonna meet very quickly is selling into sex slavery.
Shit. Yeah, that trafficker is an absolute monster, and I hope she really gets hers in the end. So now he's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So, but I just need you to know that this is like, there's no time limit on this deal. I will need you to service me for as long as I need your service. That's verbatim. I can promise you that. And then she's like, oh, okay, well, I suppose so. And it says that she feels like a trap has clicked into place that she didn't know was there. And from his perspective, he's thinking like he's trying to figure out exactly what he needs to get her into his talons because he is a hawk. Yeah. So now she has to do this like in secret though because of this guy's reputation. She doesn't want her brother giving her lip about it. And I understand that. Although he's got secrets of his own. Does Winter.
Do you have the same suspicion I do?
Yeah, I bet.
Okay.
That he's the ghost of St. Giles.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Except I'm wondering.
He's gotta be. The only thing, so like I was so dead set on it until the very end of the book.
I thought St. John was too.
I think Lord Care thinks St. John was.
Yeah, he for sure does.
Because he was shocked at the end. This is the end of the book. But he was shocked at the end when he was like, wait. It was very much like, have you ever seen Clark Kent and Superman in the same room?
Yeah.
Like, and then he does see St. John and the ghost of St. Giles in the same room. Listener, we're not going to talk a huge amount about it because it's a very like minor subplot, but the ghost of St. Giles is this dude who runs around the city as essentially a vigilante
costume
with a fucking like, it sounded like a plague mask almost on the upper half of his face. With a Harlequin costume, a gigantic black hat, very Zorro-esque in my mind.
With a giant red feather plume, like Scarlet Pimpernel style, okay?
And like big glossy black boots. And then not only does he have a long sword, he also has a short sword because he's a dramatic bitch. And I love him. The Ghost of St. Giles has to have a book, right? It's got to be Winter. Winter's going to have a book because Winter lives on Maiden Lane.
Winter has to have a book.
And it's going to be the Ghost of St. Giles book. That was my other unhinged theory. My theories. My theories were that Silence ends up with Charming Mickey in her book and that Winter is the Ghost of St. Giles.
But Winter isn't out all the time. Winter is at the house quite a bit. So is there more than one ghost?
I don't think so.
Could St. John also be a ghost?
I don't think. Oh.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, shit. Yeah. St. John has to have a book, right?
Yeah, he has to.
After his, like, ailing wife dies.
Yeah, that wife is going to die, and then he'll get a book of some sort.
Bye, Clara. Bye, William.
Clara, we appreciate you. I'm so sorry for your struggles, but I am glad that you're no longer suffering, fictionally.
I mean, frankly, it's Dickens Times, so, like...
Fucking everyone is suffering.
I assume that anybody that we meet that is, like, having a bad time... There's no second chance romances for a sickly person in this series, right? They're all dying. They all die, and they get a new love.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Lazarus is Lord Care. We find out from Lazarus's perspective that he is hunting the killer of his mistress of 2 years. That's who he's looking for, because she was slit nape to nethers.
She was Jack the Ripper.
Is that what Jack the Ripper used to do?
Yeah, he played with the innards a lot. Yeah.
Oh God.
Sorry.
I suspect that I knew that information when I first learned about Jack the Ripper, but like, I think my brain just blocked it out because I'm so horrified.
Yeah, they were term of the patriarchy, gutted from stem to sternum, is what they were. And
I don't know. I like
yuck.
nape to nethers. I think I
like nape to nethers. Yeah, it's much more gender neutral too.
Mm-hmm.
I dig it.
Yeah, so that's what he's looking for. And we learn a little bit about Temperance in that she has a sin. Did you guess what the sin was?
Yeah, she's a horny bitch.
No, specifically what she's... oh God, no, that's so much later in the book. It is that she's
a horny B word, right?
Yeah, but like all of it comes from her husband, right? Like all of this
her
stuff.
Her widow, her dead husband.
She's a widow.
She's a widow. He was very like, this should be used for procreation
very
only.
Godly.
And the one time that she was like, hey, do you think we might, do some bed sport other times? He was like, you're a harlot and you're not godly.
There's something wrong with you because you want sex. Which, like,
because you're a woman and you want sex specifically.
Well, and also, like, frankly, Temperance, just based on what you said, why do you want to have more sex with him?
I know. Poor thing, right? Poor thing. I mean, that was all she knew.
Just go diddle, girl. Like, I know that that's another sin to you probably, but, like, just, that's got to be better than him just over you grunting and pumping until he comes and then rolls over and goes to bed.
Right. Yeah, Temperance, she's always had a weakness for sins of the flesh, and she tries so hard, she works so hard every day to make sure that nobody knows how horny she is all the time. And she does the work of the foundling children in order to atone for her clitoris.
She's punishing herself for her horns.
Yes.
Yeah, we also find out that Lazarus has strange bed sport. Nobody will tell her what that means. We find out he likes to tie up and blindfold his ladies, right? Because Lazarus has an aversion to touch because...
It's never explicitly said.
I have my own suspicions. But the only touch that has never hurt is his baby sister Annalise's touch.
Yeah, and she died when he was 5. Or she was 5.
He was 10. And specifically, he feels so fucked up about it because when he was 10, as a 10-year-old boy does, he's like, go away, Annalise, stop following me. And then she goes away, gets a fever, and dies.
This Sebastian,
Anyway, so it's their first time going out in St. Giles. He comes to get her at the door, and they're headed to a local gin joint. And they walk straight up to the owner, and she's like, we are here to ask some questions. And he's like, oh, yes, what is it that you're asking? And Lazarus looks this man straight in the face, and he's like, I'm looking for the man that murdered Marie Hume.
Mm-hmm.
And the gin joint guy is like, get the fuck out. This is and Temperance is like, what the fuck? If you had told me, I wouldn't have taken you there. That's a respectable place. He's not going to know shit about a murder.
Yeah, like, at the very least, you could have told me you were looking for a murderer, you know?
Yeah, so then they go to a not respectable place, Mother Heartsease gin joint, and boy, she's...
the worst.
Yeah, she's the one who sells
children. And she continues to be the worst.
They do get some information from her, though. The last person to see Marie was some other sex worker.
So they're like, okay, we'll go find her. And then as they're leaving, he's like, what's up with you and Mrs. Heartsease over there? Like, you seem pretty mad. And she's like, yeah, I just fucking hate that bitch. And he's like, what? Like, why though? And she tells him that Mother Heartsease sells kids, and she offered one of them to the foundling house years and years ago, a baby. And everybody in the family was like, we can't afford it on the face of it. But also, if we buy a kid from her now, She's only
going to keep selling. Like, she knows you're a mark now.
Yeah. But she goes and she sells her jewelry and she buys this baby who ends up being Mary Whistle Love. What's her name? Whitson. Yes. Mary Whitson. And she's like 9 years old and Temperance loves her, but
won't let herself she won't let herself show her attachment. She is she is attached. The whole book, she's like, well, we're going to apprentice you out. We're going to apprentice you out. And Mary, like the whole book, they're talking about how they need more help at this home.
I know.
They're like, we're going to apprentice you out, Mary. We're going to apprentice you out, Mary. And Mary's just like, let me stay, please.
Yeah, I want to stay and help. And because that's the deal. The kids get to stay there until they're 9. And then they find them apprentice positions after that at 9.
I mean, it's Dickens Times.
Dickens Times is the worst.
Yeah. So then, importantly, she's crying a little bit about all of this.
Ooh, and he gets an emotion boner.
And he stops her crying with their first kiss. And it makes her wretched, sinful, wrong part of her soul break free.
Oh. Yeah. The barn doors are open, listener, okay?
Yeah. And then she finds out that Marie was his mistress of like a couple of years. And then he leaves.
Yeah. And his whole deal is that he thinks he's a sociopath. He's like, I've been shut down for so long, I don't know what it is like to feel. And so seeing her have this outburst of emotion, especially triggered by like, I don't know, another human, I just wanted to like capture it and put it in a cage. Also, throughout this whole thing, and I think it's going to go for the rest of the time because Elizabeth Hoyt, I'm pretty sure, did the same thing in The Raven Prince, but there's like this fable that starts almost every chapter, and it's about the King Lockhart and
learning what love is.
A maidservant teaching him what love is while he tortures her.
If you love it, set it free. The entire story boils down to, if you love it, let it go, and if it loves you, it'll come back, basically.
Yeah. So now, can we please skip to when they go to the musicale?
Wait, I have one question.
Yeah, tell me everything.
One very important question. This doesn't matter, but I just have to know. My note is literally, wait a goddamn minute. Is this man being hand ferried to see his mother in a chair held aloft by men?
Yes, and they're jogging.
They have carriage. And the rest of the book, he rides in a carriage. He has a carriage.
Why are you like this? You have legs that just, God damn it.
Okay,
oh my God. Yeah.
Yes.
He gets ferried around in a sedan chair, I think it's called.
Yes, that's what it's called.
Yeah. Anyway, also, he has big giant mommy issues because he got like abandoned to a wet nurse in the country when he was a baby. And then his dad was like aloof and, abusive and mean and gross. And the mom
was a society lady.
Yeah. And like put in her place kind of situation. And so he's just like, you've never been my fucking mom. What do you want from me? Because she keeps on like trying to be his mom. Like right now, she's like, when do you think you're going to get married? And he's like, ha, that's none of your fucking business. You're not my mom. And then he leaves, essentially.
Mm-hmm. So the next thing that happens is they do end up going to see the last person who saw Marie Hume alive. They find out that she was, in fact, slit nape to nethers the exact same way, and she's dead. And then they get attacked.
Oh, yeah!
3 ruffians attack them, and Lazarus is like, run! And he's like, cutty cut, slashy slash.
Yeah, and Temperance is like, no, I'm gonna pull up my skirt and try to get this very unreliable gun out.
My God, yeah, she does. And then she shoots it into the air. This is very Anique coded.
Yes.
Except Anique would have hit one of them, just not in a murder way.
Yeah.
But they run away. He is pissed about the gunshot when he finds out that, originally he thinks that one of them shoots at her, and he's like, he's pissed. This sends him into like a berserker rage.
And he thinks to himself, she's my martyr. Nobody gets to hurt her but me, ? I don't know if that's part of it, but it's like in there,
wild fury filled Lazarus's chest at the sound.
Yeah.
They couldn't. They hadn't the right to hurt the little martyr. She was his plaything.
That's the one.
Yeah. And then he finds that out, that she
shot into the air.
She's the one who shot, and he's like pissed. He's like, next time shoot. I don't give a shit if it hits me. That was a useless shot, which it really was a useless shot, because guess what? It takes you approximately 15 minutes and some change to reload that fucking pistol.
Yeah.
Do you even have stuff to reload it? Is this just
No,
a
for
one
sure
shot?
not.
Literally a one shot?
Yes.
Temperance? Anyway.
Absolutely.
So she doesn't let him leave when they get back to her house, because it turns out he has a cut. He was wounded.
Yes. And when they're out there, she's like, you want me to shoot a gun where it might hit you? And then he says, yes. And she says, you think my life is worth more than yours? And he says, what makes you think my life is worth anything? Because he's a Sebastian.
What a Sebastian. So they get back to the house and she doctors him up. And this is such a side note. It just made me laugh so hard because I saw it so vividly in my brain. They're in the kitchen, right? There's like 7 and 20 children in the kitchen and Winter. And the boy held the cat by its upper body, its lower limbs stretched and hanging. It looked dead, except for the fact that it was purring.
His name is Soot.
How fascinating, Lazarus replied. He hated cats. And it just brought me a lot. Like, I could see it so vividly in my mind. This little child holding this slinky worm of a cat, and the cat's just like. So she does like wound him up, and she is worried that she's causing him pain because he is clearly in pain. But it's not just the knife pain while she's stitching him up. It's his Sebastian pain, his aversion to touch. But she doesn't know about that yet. And then Lazarus leaves, wandering St. Giles with a hard-on because it hurts. But he's like, man, I'm so fucking horny for that lady.
That martyr, that little martyr. God damn it.
His plaything. And then he also has put together that they're trying to assassinate him because they've been attacked a couple of times or something like that. Like, oh yeah, because the first man from the very first chapter.
Yeah, when she first sees him.
Yeah, those two attacks.
So now, in order to hold up his end of the bargain, he's going to take her to a musicale. And that way she can like mingle and try to find somebody who try to find a patron. Specifically, all book, I was like, why do they have to have a penis, Temperance? What are you doing? Anyway, she's like, I've got to talk to a rich man who will fund the house. And so Nell gets out this slinky red dress that she couldn't bear to part with even at her toughest times. And all of them Cinderella it onto her. And it's really, really cute and sweet. And her bosom is out in a way that Temperance does not agree with, but can't really help. And then her sister Silence arrives because her husband's ship has been stolen from, and they want to send her husband to jail. It's her whole storyline.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. So now he picks her up. He is wooed by it, and they're in the coach. And this is just very important, so I have to tell you about it. I don't remember what he's apologizing for, but she says to him,
he wants to hear everything. Like, he wants to know why she's upset. And then when she does tell him, he's like, oh my God, she confided in me. And then he says something like a little bit snappy to her.
Yes, because she calls him kind. And he's like,
yeah,
I'm not kind. And she's like upset about it. And then she's like, are you apologizing to me, Lord Care? And if I were, would you accept my obeisance? I have no need to have you at my feet. Don't you? Then perhaps it is my needs that would find me there. Or perhaps you might care to kneel before me. And then he says, I see you in that dress, madam, kneeling before me, your skirts spread in a shining pool of crimson. I see myself standing before you. You look up at me, your golden half eyes half closed, as they are now, your lips reddened and wet from your tongue. Or perhaps mine. No, she moaned. She's so horny right now.
Yes.
And he's like, I see myself taking your hand and placing it on the fall of my breeches. I see your slim, cool fingers carefully undoing each button as I stroke your bound hair. I see. And then the coach, to a stop.
They're here now. They're going to the stupid musicale.
Horny times.
And the spell is broken, though.
All of these scenes where, like, he's describing what he wants to do to her, I'm like, sir, say more.
They're wonderful. Yeah. And then she feels so guilty. And she's trying to figure out what's wrong with her because she's into it.
Yeah.
Poor Temperance. So they go in. She meets a couple of dudes that might be interested in the thing. She also meets Lady Hero and doesn't realize who she is when Lady Hero comes in to, like, help her with her hem. And because she's a duke's sister. And so I
was like, I swear to God, if Lady Hero doesn't end up being a patroness, I'm going to be so sad.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I knew there was no way she wasn't going to be the patroness.
I mean, yeah.
I also can't wait for Lady Hero. Do we know who Lady Hero gets with?
We don't know him. And not only that, the very first chapter, the meet cute, is
Have you started it already?
Perhaps.
Love you.
Is her walking into a drawing room trying to, like, get some air at a ball and then seeing this guy's bare ass just thrusting into a married lady on the settee.
She gets with a rake.
Yes.
Oh my God. I love a reformed rake.
I know. And it's great because he doesn't even break, rhythm. He's just like, I'm a little busy here. Can you leave? And she says, actually, no, because her husband is right out there and it seems like he's looking for her. And so he jumps up, puts his dick away, gets underneath the couch, and then she helps the lady get together and helps her cover for this indiscretion because her husband walks in like, about to pull a sword or whatever, because she's known to do this. And then after they leave, he's like, I can't breathe down here. I need to get out. And she doesn't move because she's standing in front of it. And so in order to get her to move, he says, I can see up your skirt. And then she scurries off and she's like, oh, how dare you? And they are enemies immediately because
delighted.
He thinks she's just so moralistic and judgmental, and she doesn't like that her eyebrow twitch that she practiced in the mirror at 12 and makes grown men quiver has no effect on him whatsoever. It's incredible. Anyway. So sorry, everyone. That was book 2.
Yeah, you got a quickie live. A quickie of the first 3 chapters. All right. So Lazarus in the musicale does introduce her to 3 men, and his friend St. John is very suspicious of him. He's like, what are you doing with a respectable woman like that? And you will not corrupt a woman like her. And we find out that she reminds him of his sickly wife, Clara.
Yes.
And he feels very protective of her. And then they go to sit for the musicale, and she finds out specifically that Lazarus's hobby is translating poetry from Greek and Latin. And she's like, so you're a poet? And he's like, no, I'm not. I translate other poetry. And she's like, yeah, but you need to be just as good at rhyming and turning it into a poem in English.
Yeah.
And oh boy. And then she
keeps
like,
talking. Oh my
he's
God,
like,
I feel so seen.
Oh, and he's like, nobody's ever described it so well. Anyway, and then this was just super cute because they start talking because she's like, I don't know anything about you. And so she's asking him questions. And there was this thing where she's like, oh man, I don't remember the last time I had a marzipan sweet treat. And in his head, he's like, I want to buy her a whole box and then watch her eat them and lick her lips. Because I'm a horny bastard.
Yeah. So she finds out about his sister. She meets his mom, and the mom sex worker shames her because she thinks that she's a sex worker. And then when he doesn't want to talk about that anymore, he asks her about her past because she doesn't talk about her husband.
And he prods.
Yeah, he prods really hard. And she's like, well, we met because he came to work at the foundling home and he was like a really righteous man and a really kind man and la 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 la.
God.
And then because he gets jealous of a dead man, he snaps at her and he's like, oh yeah, do you have a shrine that you like kneel in front of and pray to him still?
Oh my
or
God.
Like, what?
Saint husband?
Yeah. And she's like, how the fuck dare you? She tries to get up. And then he grabs her arm and he's like, don't make a scene. You want to get a patron here, right? Plus the music's about to start.
And then the music happens and she is entranced by it. And he's like, this is not on page, but like, there's no way he wasn't just staring at her the entire time because the music ends.
And she closes her eyes and she just lets it wash over her. And she doesn't realize that it's like gone on for so long.
And then when it's over, he drags her into a private room and he's like basically aggressively interrogating her. And he's like, what did you feel? And she's like, what the fuck do you mean? And he's like, what did the music make you feel? And she's like, life. Like, I felt alive. What do you want of me? And he's like, I need to know how it made you feel because there are people who care about music and people who don't and people who feel things and people who don't. Now tell me what you feel. And she's like, what do you want of me? And he says, I want everything. And then he walks up to her and grabs her face and like makes out with her against the door. And she is into it. She has her hand up in his hair and all of these things. And then she realizes when she touches his shoulder that the wound is infected because he pulls away and is like, that hurts. And she's like, oh my God, it's infected. So she's like, we're fucking leaving. They get in the coach and they go to his house.
And then she nurses him and she keeps the doctor with the bleeding tool away from him. Thank fuck. The drunk doctor.
The drunk doctor who's like, the pus is good for the wound. We're going to do some bloodletting. And he's like, Temperance, I need to get this dude away from me because I can't do it right now.
Protect
and there's
me.
No fucking way I'm dying at the hand of this doctor.
And he says that he trusts her to nurse him. And it makes a glowy sensation inside her.
More importantly, because I just put this together, on the coach ride back while he's delirious, because at the end of the book I was like, where did this come from? On the coach ride back, he learns that she loves music, and when she was little she had a spinet, which is basically a Dickens Times tiny piano, lap piano, and she sold it after her husband died. And he probes into it a little bit and he learns that she does love music and she did it. He starts to put together that she's doing all of these things to punish herself, essentially. And he's like, I need to get to the bottom of this. But the important thing is that at one time in her life, she had a little piano and she loved it. And now she had to sell it. And so she doesn't have it. And this will come back later.
Just think about that, listener. Let that marinate.
Yeah, and by the way, the entire time she's taking care of him, she's basically like, he's being a dick. And she's just like, well, you're being a dick. And he's like, I am a dick. And she's like, all right, fine. And elbows him in the fucking wound. And he's like, ah! It was delightful.
Then, as he gets like more and more delirious, she starts taking advantage and getting more information out of him about his past and his feelings and all the business.
This is when she finds out about Annalise. And he tells her all sorts of things. And then he passes out and she ends up falling asleep in a chair next to his bed because she wants to leave. But his valet, Smalls, is like, what if he needs you in the night? And she's like, okay, fine. So she stays. And when she wakes up, he's awake. He's looking at her and he asks her about her husband then. And she tells him this time. Because it's this is a common theme throughout the book a little bit where it's like things happen, it's like things feel safe in the dark, essentially. To do things and say things that would usually not be said and done.
Yeah, and in this case, she feels like she owes him some vulnerability because he was so vulnerable to her the night before. Yeah,
oh my God. Oh my God. This is why I totally missed this. This is why I brought up the fact that she elbowed him in his wound.
Oh, yeah.
It's because you, gasped Lord Care, are a vindictive harpy, madam.
Yes.
no need to thank me. I'm merely doing my Christian duty. And it had me cackling. So they're digging into her husband, right? And she's like, he was a good man, a wonderful man, but I didn't deserve him. And he looks at her and he says, or actually, no, he closes his eyes and murmurs, I've never been married, but I think it would be quite awful to have to deserve one's spouse. And then my heart shattered into 18,000 pieces on what is almost assuredly his beautiful polished wood floor.
For sure.
And he asks her if she was in love with her husband. And she says that she loved him, but she was never in love with him. Which, that tracks.
Well, and later on, though, he, doesn't listen to her in this moment, because later on he talks about how, I mean, I guess he technically says that he was a man she loved, but he made it more romantic in his mind than it was, I feel.
Well, and I think it's because he just has such a distinct lack of understanding regarding emotion. Like, I'm not going to lie. So this man definitely has, CPTSD, obviously.
Yes.
But, he also very much tracked as somewhere on the neurodivergent spectrum, right? To me anyway, he tracked that way a lot, because just his lack of understanding, it wasn't just the way he was raised, because he doesn't really understand any emotions, right? It seems like he understands emotions that are almost strictly central nervous system based, so they're things that are
feelings,
exactly,
not emotions.
Exactly.
He understands feelings,
and that struck me as coded very. Anyway, so she gets back the next morning and all of her family is there and they're fucking pissed. They're demanding reparations from Lazarus and she's like, you can't do that. I was just there because he was wounded. I'm not ruined. Also, I'm a fucking widow. I'm on the shelf. It's fine. Fuck off. And we
Yes, tell me everything.
Winter closed the school for the day because apparently he was out all night looking for her. As the ghost of St. Giles.
He's the ghost.
As the ghost of St. Giles? There's no fucking way he's not the ghost of St. Giles. So her brothers are all pissed. They end up storming out. Her family is very rocky. Asa is basically, all of these brothers have to have a book. Asa is kind of the farthest away from the family. He's very much separate from them.
And they don't know what he does for a living.
Oh my God, he's got to be he's got to be a spy.
He's a smuggler, right? Oh, he could be a spy.
Or a smuggler.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's one of those S words. He does an S job.
Maybe both.
Both, yeah. Maybe he's a spy and his cover is a smuggler. He's an S job squared. Anyway, by the way, they couldn't go to their brothers for money to help with the foundling home because they just don't ever ask Asa for anything. And he's a little bit hurt by the fact that they didn't come to him when they were struggling. And Concord just doesn't, he's the one who took over the brewery and he just doesn't have the funds to help them now.
I can't believe either of them were like, why didn't you come to me? We know you don't have the cash. You're not an aristocrat. We know what the income disparity is.
Apparently Asa could have the cash. He's like, I wish you'd come to me sooner.
Not for long term, though, for sure. He could do a stopgap kind of help.
Oh, yeah. It's a stop. It would not be a forever kind of thing. Yeah, yes, you're right.
Yeah.
So they're like, you're not gonna see Lazarus again. And she's like, no,
I'm a grown-ass woman. Leave me alone.
Concord looks at Winter and is like, I can't believe that you're letting her whore herself out for this home. And she is horrified because she's like, oh my God, is the whore written all over my face because I'm a horny lady?
Yeah. And the text actually says it felt like she had been slapped in the face. And I really wanted the text to say, and so she crossed that room and slapped him in the face. But that's not what happened.
I wish. Temperance would not. The only one that she'd be willing to slap for being out of line is Lazarus.
Yeah, and that's why she has to marry him.
Yeah. So, sorry, sorry, my notes apparently wrote down Mother Heartsies as Mother Heartsies, like Hurtsies, which is hilarious to me. So anyway, they're going out again, okay? It's time
don't they go talk to Tommy?
Yes, Tommy Pett. So he shows up at her house, and it is time to meander off. They're headed to see Tommy Pett, which is a name that they got from somewhere somehow to go. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. He's a child. He's a child survival sex worker.
Uh-huh. And he works at the most notorious brothel owned by Mrs. Whitechapel, the mysterious proprietor. And Tommy Pett, we find out, is Marie's brother. And according to Tommy, he only saw her like once a week on his day off on Saturday. And he's the one who actually is the last one who saw Marie, because he walked into her house and she was slit open.
He found her body.
Yeah.
He wasn't the last one to see her alive. He found her body. And so then they ask him, like, okay, well, do you know who did it? And he gets this maniacal smile on his face. And he says, well, she was tied up and blindfolded, so I assumed it was you, sir. Isn't that the way you like to enjoy my sister? Ooh, Tommy, you're too old for your age. I'm so sorry.
But then don't worry.
Tommy.
Because immediately Temperance is like,
yes,
merp. Tied up and blindfolded, and then he bribes the lady who's running the brothel, the manager, basically, to let him go find more men that tie up and blindfold. And she's like, you'd be interested in room 6. And so they do go upstairs in this brothel to a secret voyeurism room, like hallway, where you can peep in at places.
Hallway.
They go up to the first room, 9, and he's like, Temperance, look inside and tell me what you see.
Look.
And they see a woman giving a man a blowjob. And she's like, so hell yeah. And then they go to the next room, room 8, and they look in, and a man is doing doggy style.
And he's got her like pinned up against the wall so that she can't
Not yet.
leave. Not yet.
Not yet.
Oh.
He's making her look in the holes, essentially, but he's not, like, forcing her to do it. She's doing it, essentially, herself.
No, I'm not saying she's forcing it. I'm just saying, like, he's standing behind her. It's a small hallway.
Oh, yeah. I thought you meant he was, like, holding her in place.
No, sorry.
But then they get to room number 6, and the third room has the person they were looking for, and she looks in the peephole, and then he comes up behind her and presses his body against hers, and she's against the wall, and tells her to describe what she sees. And she's shocked at the woman that's tied up and blindfolded. And then she's shocked when the man drops to his knees to go down on the lady.
Wait. So this is all done in dialogue. And he's like, okay, so what do you see? And she says, well, her legs are splayed open. And there's like a pause. And then he says, into her ear. He's whispering into her ear so she can feel it.
It's so sexy. Would you like that? Would you like my mouth against your center? My tongue against your bud? I'd lick you there, tasting you, savoring you until you bucked beneath me. But I wouldn't let you go. I'd hold you down, your thighs spread, your cunny open to me, and I'd lick you until you came over and over. And don't worry, listener, we do, in fact, get, like, this check gets cashed.
Yeah, we get that scene. For sure. It's great.
And then he turns her head, and now they're making out. And now she's flipped around and up against the wall, and he's
pulling up her skirts
to be inside of her. And he's like grinding her against his thigh.
Yeah, so she has to ride him, it says.
And then she pulls on his hair and he yelps.
Well, because she's into it, okay?
Yes.
But then all of a sudden she's like, oh, I couldn't possibly, this isn't me. And like she pulls on his hair and like goes to escape. So it's
and
not...
then she runs.
Oh my God, dummy. She runs into the St. Giles fucking wilderness. And so he's running after her and she thinks he's running after her in like a sexual thrall. But really, he's trying to be like, stop it, we're gonna get knifed. Like, you can't just run out into the St. Giles darkness, you dumbass. And then they do. They get surrounded by 4 dudes all of them have koshes or bludgeons or something. And so he's like, run.
Don't worry.
And then she's like,
our
no.
dandy vigilante shows up.
Yeah.
And they are slashing together. They're back to back. The bad guy, the ruffians can't even get close to them.
And then as the guys leave, the ghost of St. Giles tips his hat to her and then bounds off into the slinky darkness.
Anytime we ever see the ghost, he never speaks. Is it because we'd recognize your voice, Winter?
Yeah, or Saint St. John.
St. John? So, of note, at the beginning of the fucking next chapter, there's no way he's not the ghost, because Temperance is telling Nell about the ghost of St. Giles, and she comments that his figure is much like Winter's.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so when they get back and Winter does find out, he's like, you can't see Lord Care anymore, and goes to bed. And Nell is like, I think Lazarus is into you. And she's like, oh, they wouldn't. And then they end up in a conversation about sex, and apparently Nell is a little into unusual bed sport.
Well, and she used to be a sex worker, and so she had a client who was into tying her up, and she was like, there are men who like to tie women up and like hurt them or whatever, but my guy just liked tying me up. He just liked it better if I didn't move around a lot. And then she looks at Temperance, because Temperance is like, oh, you know, oh my gosh, he's not respectable, and this is just so bad. And Nell gets a little bit vulnerable for a minute, and she's like, but is it though? Like, bed sport in general, if it brings a tiny bit of joy for a little while, is it really that bad? And Temperance has a lot to think about now, especially now that she knows that her closest confidant wouldn't judge her if she were to hop in those sheets.
Yeah. So we're going to zippy zap. They're going to a ball. Lazarus has sent her a beautiful gown and shoes and stays and like literally everything that she needs to look like the belle of the ball. Okay. And she is finishing up, and Lazarus, when they get to the ball, is regretting putting her in all this finery because she's getting all sorts of male attention.
He's like, I'm such a dumbass.
And then they have this little conversation about like, money can't buy happiness. And she's like, I'll give you back this gown after the end of the night. And he's like, if you do, I'm going to burn it. And she's like, okay, well, I guess I'll keep it then.
Well, and then he says, no. And then he says, like, I'm shocked at your wastefulness, Mrs. Whatever. Like, how dare you? So, yeah, then they have a rich people don't understand Maslow's hierarchy of need talk. And that's fucking annoying. Because he says any man can be miserable no matter what, no matter whether his stomach's full or not. And like, I'm so sorry. That's a different thing. You dick. That is a fucking different thing. Yes, you can be rich and miserable. That is different than starving and freezing on the street.
Yeah.
You asshole. Anyway, so he sees the patron like that she had like sort of hooked before. And so he inserts her into that conversation because he gets a shiver up his back and he knows that his mother is approaching.
Really quickly, very important.
Yeah.
She asks him why he made her watch
at
the brothel. And he says, because you draw me, because you are kind, but not soft, because when you touch me, the pain is bittersweet, because you cradle a desperate secret to your bosom like a viper in your arms and don't let go of it, even as it gnaws upon your very flesh. I want to pry that viper from your arms, to suckle upon your torn and bloody flesh, to take your pain within myself and make it mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Yowza.
He's down. He's
done for. Done
Yeah.
for.
So Sir Henry is the one that she ends up chatting with. And while he's talking to his mom, he finishes talking to her. And
well, while he's like finally saying all the things that he should have said to his mom forever ago in the middle of a ball, like that's savage. That's savage.
Yeah, because
anyway,
she's like, I've never done anything to you. And he's like, you're right. That's exactly what you did for me.
That's exactly the fucking problem. Yeah. So he sees that she and this Henry fuck are gone. And he's like, oh no. this guy has bad intentions, I know it. So he goes running off to find her. Meanwhile, she gets pulled into a dark room by this asshole, and she's trying to be like, urchin clothes and money for milk or whatever. And he's like, oh, yes, absolutely. She's like, oh, wait, so you are interested in my foundling home? And he says, yes, it'll be the perfect cover for meeting you. And then he tries to like make out with her whole face and put his like thick, gross tongue in her mouth and stuff. So she
twists his ear like a naughty child.
Yeah.
And then Lazarus comes in a-punchin'. And
oh, God.
They hit the floor, and then he grabs her and yoinks her out of that room. And now they're in a passageway, and he kisses the ever-loving shit out of her.
No! That's not what happens.
They do.
It's even better than that.
Okay,
no.
You tell it.
So he takes her out, and he's like, what are you thinking, going into dark rooms with men? And she's like, well, I mean, he says, don't go anywhere with a man who's not your family. And then she says, well, what about you? And he says, you shouldn't ever be alone with me. In fact, you should never see me again. I'm 8 times worse than Sir Henry, whatever his name is. And then he like has her sort of like up against a wall at this point because he needs to fix her hair before they go back into the ball because she's all disheveled. And so she's standing there being like, yeah, you're like, he looks so mad and he's so scary, but she's into it. So she gets up on her toes and like very lightly kisses him, and he's not moving at all. And then she takes her tongue and she puts it on the seam of his mouth, and then she very quietly says, open. And then he loses all control, and then he kisses the ever-living fuck out of her.
Yeah. Thank you, Mel.
My God.
It was so good.
So he ends up taking her home. Well, they go back into the ballroom and we meet Hero again. It's fine. Then he says, I have to feed you a ton of like really rich food and then take you home before the light of day or whatever.
Yeah. And she asks him of note, though. She's like, why are you still looking for the killer if you didn't love Marie? And he says, perhaps I search because she should have meant something. Because I should have loved her. Perhaps I'm chasing a will-o'-the-wisp of phantom emotion. Perhaps I'm merely fooling myself. Oh, Sebastian. Oh, no. He also shows her how to dance out on the balcony, which was swoony as fuck. Oh, God.
Yeah, it's great.
In the carriage home, he tucks her up against him and puts a blankie on her and tucks her in.
Yeah.
And then they get there and she's lost her slipper and he finds it and puts it on for her.
And like she feels so safe in his arms, and it feels very incongruous with his reputation.
And then he simply walks her to the door and brushes his lips against hers and says goodnight. And then, oh Lord, she walks into the house and,
oh my God, and
all of her family's there because Silence has been missing. And we're not going to, like we said, we're not jumping into Silences, but this is the ruination of Silence.
That's book 3.
Yeah.
But the important part about Silence's trials and tribulations for this book is that this starts a pattern of her having something terrible happen in her life and her first instinct being to go to him for a shoulder to cry on and comfort and his, like, you know, just talking it through with him. So in the morning, he wakes up to like his valet trying to keep her out of the room, and she bustles past him and she tells him, and he says that he just like holds her and all he can say is, I'm sorry. What?
Very importantly,
yeah.
She calls him by his Christian name for the first time.
Oh my God, you're right.
She's like,
it's the first time.
She's like, I just didn't know where to go, Lazarus. I needed you. Like,
it's the best. So they have this whole conversation about how her sister's ruined and it's terrible. And he's got his arms around her and he just keeps on saying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
He's
like
also
the first time he's ever said that to another human.
Out like specific, like he has quote unquote apologized. He said apologatory statements. but he's never said, I'm sorry to someone, basically.
Well, and specifically in like a comforting way, too.
Mm-hmm. And the entire time that she's telling him this story, because William, Silence's fuck of a husband, did not go after her. And the entire time she's telling this story, Lazarus in his head is like, what a fucking idiot. If I knew that Temperance was in a situation like that, there is nothing that could have stopped me from going in there hell or high water to save her.
She says, I'm so tired because I haven't slept at all. And he said, well, why don't you lay down with me and we'll just rest for a while. So she ends up falling asleep in his arms.
Well, and he's like taking the pin out of her hair and
oh
like
my God, it's so
and
swoony.
Like brushing his hands through her hair. And then they both fall. She falls asleep and he just lays there thinking about how wonderful it is to have her in his arms. And then he falls asleep. And then she wakes up and she doesn't want to open her eyes because she feels so warm and comforted next to the large, hot body next to her. Mm-hmm. And then he wakes up and he kisses her. And
he kisses her. He does a sleepy one on her.
Uh-huh.
Also, he is wearing a murder robe. And that was very an Elizabeth
very
Hoyt
important
TM murder robe.
Yep.
It's the best.
A banyan.
A silk banyan. And so she's like, take this off. And he's like, I can't. And she's like, oh, yeah, that's right.
And
well, will it hurt you for you to touch me? And he's like, oh, I can tell you it'll be the opposite of hurting or something.
And
crazy.
It is on TM.
Well, no, yeah. And then he says, I've bedded a lot of women before, but I think you're going to be the expert here because I've never made love to someone. And people tell me it's like extraordinary, but, you know, forgive me if I'm fumbling a bit to try to figure this out.
Uh-huh.
And she keeps on being like, get inside me. Because he has his penis like just on the outside right by her clit.
Grinding on her folds and her clit. And then he's like sucking on her nipples the whole time and like pinching them. And like her whole body is an instrument of pleasure right now. And he's playing it like a sousaphone.
Yes. Well, and this is such a look into her marriage and her, at least most of her previous sexual experiences, because she's like, he's not just shoving it in. Yeah, what?
And super importantly, this entire time, she went to touch him at one point and he takes both of her hands. Yes. And so one of his hands is cuffing her hands above her head for this entire scene. And she's into it.
Loves
and then...
it.
Wow, it was wonderful. And then
so then he penetrates her, right? And he's doing this like slow rhythm and he's making sure that his pelvis bumps up against her clit. And she's like, this is maddening. Like I need more, like something. And then he looks at her and he says, let go. And she says, I can't. And he says, yes, you can. Let go. And so she comes like a freight train and so does he. And it's like this sexual and emotional release that they're taking together.
And then afterwards, he says, that was extraordinary indeed. And then they go back to bed.
Well, and this is the start of her pattern of not giving him the words of affirmation he fucking needs.
Oh, yeah.
Because she says like, oh, it's my turn to be like, yeah, that was great, but I'm just so sleepy. And she goes to sleep. Later on, listener, just in case we forget it, they have sex another time. And she's like, I really need to tell him like what he means to me, what this means to me.
I fucking made a note about that because I was so mad at her.
I was so mad because she literally thinks I either need to say it now or lose everything. And she decides just to go to sleep.
It can wait for tomorrow. Ma'am, tomorrow is promised to nobody.
Nobody. Aneurysms happen even in Dickens Times.
Especially in Dickens Times.
Then. Great point, Sabrina. Great point.
It's a shock that this man doesn't come down immediately with frickin' what's the coffee thing?
An apoplexy of some sort?
Tuberculosis and then die.
Okay, so first of all, I was just putting another, thing out there before I heard you say the coffee thing. And then I was like the grounds, like the coffee thing. And then you said tuberculosis, and then I got it. But I went on a journey just now.
Yeah. Anyway, they wake up the next morning, and he wakes up first, and he's marveling at how he's never slept and woken up next to a woman before, and he loves waking up next to her because she is disheveled. She's not perfect. She's real. And he's like, I think I want a real woman. And like, he hasn't acknowledged that he's in love with her, but like, he's in love with her, right?
Yeah, he's gone.
And she wakes up and immediately is in a tizzy, looking for her clothing. And she's like, I need to get home. I don't want my brother to think that we're lovers. And in his head, he's like, we are lovers.
God. Okay, so he thinks that, but then some sort of survival instinct told him not to say that out loud. Mm-hmm, because he wouldn't be able to bear it if she had gone more down that road.
Mm-hmm.
Yes!
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
But he's desperate to see her again. And so he's like, well, tonight we're going to continue the hunt. And he kisses her goodbye. And he's basically like, farewell. And she says nothing and leaves. Ugh, I was so fucking mad at her.
Ma'am!
Then we zippies up. We're in her point of view. And she's like, I feel so guilty sleeping with Lazarus, but also I'm happier for it.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Is that called an endorphin? I don't know.
And then when he comes to pick her up, they have a awkwardly stilted formal conversation. At the door, and he had like her hand is on his arm, and they're meandering down the street, and then he yoinks her into a doorway, and then he kisses her, and then he pulls away, and he's like, "That's better."
Oh, that's better. What a relief, he says. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So now they're on their way to see Tommy Pet again.
Yeah, they go back into St. Giles for more investigation times.
Oh, it's not Tommy Pet again yet. Okay, so they go to see another gentleman that likes to blindfold and tie up women. And we find out that Marie has been seeing other people, even though she was his mistress and they were expected to like be faithful, blah, blah, blah. And so they have a couple of other people to talk to. This man also specifically states that one time he saw Tommy at Marie's house with a woman in a red coat.
Yeah. Everything's coming back to Mrs. Heartsease.
Uh-huh. I did not put that together. It didn't register that she wore a red coat. I whimsied the fuck out of it. I was like, who is it? Who's it? Who's the murderer?
There's a man's red coat.
So this was just a relationship important moment because she says to him, I believe that you, on their way to the brothel, I believe that you wanted to love Marie, that you're enamored by the idea of love, but that you have no concept what love is. I think that's what you're searching for in St. Giles. Some source of emotion, some inkling of what human feeling really is. What do you want me to say? Something, anything. Tell me that she was the love of your life. Explain to me how it is she was your mistress, but you had no idea she had other lovers or even a brother. Tell me something, Care. Feel something. And then he says, perhaps there's nothing to tell. Perhaps my actions are on a whim only. Perhaps I've never loved another human being in my life. Perhaps I can't. And she says, I don't believe you. All people can love. And then he goes low as fuck because he says, all, what a very childish thing to say. Do whores love? Do murderers? Tell me, does the man who raped your sister feel love?
For the record, he did not, but nobody believes her.
Yeah. Oh God, silence. I can't wait for her book. She's going to be such a sad lady.
Especially since that baby that gets left on her doorstep gets left by a very particular person. Yeah.
You think that's where the baby came from?
Yeah.
Mickey?
Yes. Who else would leave a baby on her doorstep?
But where'd he get a baby?
Who else wants to keep a connection to her?
Yeah, but like, where'd he get a baby?
I mean, I think he's slinging dick all over the place, you know?
Oh, you think it's his baby? It's his bastard child?
I think so.
Yeah, so she is enraged. They're in a coach, and she's enraged by his response. And she launches herself at him and is like, whacky, whacky, whack. And he stops her.
Well, because she says the sister thing. The sister thing was the last straw.
And he stops her, and he says, I can't say whatever it is that you want me to say, but I can give you this. And then Smooch Town. And she says in her head, why couldn't he feel? Why couldn't he love? Why couldn't he give her what she needed? But his mouth was heavy on hers, his lips drugging. She found herself grasping at him instead of trying to free herself. If he would not let her go, then she'd take from him as he took from her.
Good job, Temperance. And then she's like, we couldn't possibly have sex in a carriage, though. But then she feels his naked penis up against her. And then he puts like the tip right at her opening. And he says, you do it. Like, you mount me. And she's like, no, I couldn't. And then she just starts like rubbing up against him and doing like a really slow
What
rub.
A tease.
Yeah, and he's begging her to actually fuck him. And then when she finally does, she's going slow because she likes this rhythm. And he's like, ride me. And she says, I don't think I want to. And he's like, he spanks her, I think. And
through
he
her
says,
dress?
Yeah. And he says, ride me. And so she does. And then they both come like a freight train again.
And then they just stay connected, and he like puts his arms around her, and she lays her head on his shoulder, and they're just snuggling in the carriage. And then she does get off and return to matronly Temperance, and it's like it never happened, and he's so disappointed. And when they get there, he walks her to her door, and she tries to go inside without saying goodbye, but he grabs her and pulls her back and kisses the hell out of her. Right. And when she pulls away, she says, I can't, and leaves.
But like, joke's on you, Temperance, because he might not have been able to give it to his mistress, but like, he is feeling.
You're not a mistress.
This is what feelings look like.
He's already done so much with you, Temperance, that he has never done with anybody else. Man.
Yeah, I know. So anyway, now should we skip to the climactic end-ish? Okay, no. So then that baby is sick again, and she's really worried about that baby. Mm-hmm. And so she ends up going back to his house
that night
and for more comforts. And he's like, yes, anything you need, but she doesn't want to talk about it. And he says, what do you need? And she kisses him, and he takes her up to his bedroom. And then she says, no, I want to do it your way. I want to try it your way. And he checks in with her no less than 82 times. As he's like tying her up and doing all the business, he goes down on her like a champion while she's tied up and blindfolded. Mm-hmm. And again, still checking in with her. So he's like, tell me what's going on. What's going on with you? And she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then finally, she tells him about that baby. And since she's tied up still, because she's like, untie me. And he's like, no, not till you tell me what's going on. That's what's going to happen here. So she tells him about the baby, and then their conversation gets to him telling her that he thinks she's punishing herself. And then he asks her, like, I think, like, what her hangups are or whatever with sex. And she finally tells him that the day her husband died, because he died of, like, a barrel accident or something Dickinsonian, and right at that moment, she was in bed with another dude for the first time. What?
I'm so sorry. It just registered that you said Dickinsonian. I love you so much.
Dickensian. It's Dickensian.
Dickinsonian makes it sound like a fucking museum that's on the fucking Washington like museum mall thing.
Yeah, but I think more people would know that it was related to Charles Dickens if we pronounced it Dickinsonian and not Dickensian.
Oh, but
there are a ton of people who have no idea what Dickensian refers to. You know what I mean?
I know, but boy,
but
Dickensian,
it is so satisfying to say.
It's such a good word, Dickensian.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really satisfying.
Yeah, anyway.
Dickinsonian is rough.
Dickinsonian.
Anyway. Now, this is when he says, wait, sex is punishment to you.
Mm-hmm.
Committing adultery is your greatest sin.
And not even adultery, it's sex outside of marriage.
Yes.
Uh-huh. And he's like, oh, God, it hurt my heart.
I know. He said, that's why you came here. You're punishing yourself, right?
Yes. So he looks at her, and she is wondering this because he's basically like, this was degrading for you, and you needed this. You wanted it, but it's a sin. And then he says, it shouldn't matter to me what you feel.
It's never
After all,
before.
I never considered the emotions of my partners before. Quite frankly, their feelings were of no account to me in our transactions. But oddly, what you feel does matter to me. He paused, looking down at his hands for a moment and then back up at her, his face exposed now, sad and hurt and resigned. The sight made something twist in her chest. You matter to me, he said. And although I am a disgusting creature in many ways, although I have needs not of the ordinary, perhaps even evil needs, I believe that I do not deserve to be used in this way. I may be a man without conscience, but you, my dear martyr, are better than this act.
Wow.
Good for you, Lazarus. Stand up for yourself. You don't deserve this. You don't deserve to be a tool of punishment for herself.
Well, but it also wasn't. But she just hasn't given him any of the words he needs to understand.
Exactly.
And she thinks that to herself right now. She's like, oh my gosh, I haven't told him. I needed to tell him how I'm feeling, and I just don't quite know how to do it. And then he leaves. Mm-hmm. And
really importantly, just because we commented on this at the very, very, very beginning, the spinet, before she shows up distraught, we find out that he's having a piano made for her as a present. Because he knows she loves music, and usually he would just get his women, his mistresses, jewels or dresses, all of this stuff. But
and he
she doesn't care. He doesn't care about them, and they want something that whenever they're no longer his mistress, they can just sell and get some cash. And he puts a lot of thought into this. He's talking to the piano maker himself.
And effort. And he's like, I think that this pattern will be the best because it's feminine but understated. Just
Mother
like
of
my
pearl and lovely, just like her. Oh, God, it's adorable. Yeah, he's gone. So she spends 30 minutes getting dressed because it's, Dickens Times / England Times. And he is gone. He has ordered the carriage to take her wherever it is that she needs to go. And then we're in Lazarus's point of view. And he's contemplating how these new emotions. Yeah, he's like, he now, for the first time in his life, has a desire to be loved. And he's like, how banal. And yet, banal or not, he could not change the way his heart felt. And he ends up this hurt. So he ends up at one of Marie's other lovers' homes, Sir Hadley. And they talk, and Sir Hadley and him have this really intense conversation about basically why are you looking? Because Hadley's like, why are you looking for her killer? And he's like, because it's important. She mattered. And he's like, but it was a transaction between you. She was seeing other men behind your back, all of these things. He's like, did you love Marie? And he's like, no, I never loved Marie, but she was a person. If I do not find her killer, seek retribution for her death, then no one held her in regard. And Hadley finishes his sentence and says, and if no one holds Marie in regard, then perhaps no one holds you in regard. No one holds us in regard. We are merely solitary creatures enacting our bizarre form of human contact without anyone caring about us at all. And this
Sir
is like
Hadley.
Yeah. And Lazarus is like, well, fuck, but I want to be held in regard by Temperance.
And he says, have you ever been married, Sir Hadley? And Sir Hadley says, nope, never. So then he starts thinking to himself, okay, now I definitely have to get Temperance back because I love her. We have feelings. And she likes the way I fuck.
Yeah.
So, like, this, none of that is said out loud, but that's very much like where his mind is at the moment.
And
Meanwhile,
this is the point. Well, this is the guy that we find out about Tommy Pett and the red coat from visiting Marie. This is the guy. This is when it happens. And he puts all of it together, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, meanwhile, she has decided to divert the carriage to St. John's house so that he can help her put on an open house.
Come look at all of the sad
place?
orphan children and give us money.
Which is apparently in fashion. These bitches are showing up with like 3-foot feather plumes in their hair.
This is an event for them.
At the children. I cannot.
Very Dickens Times.
Very. So they work together. It takes like a week to get all of this. And she's thinking to herself, like, I've obviously fucked it up beyond repair because I want to see him so badly. I want to hear what he thinks about this and get his ideas for how to make it better. But I know I can't approach him because he like left me alone in his house. He obviously doesn't want to see me. Meanwhile, he has been like doing more investigations or
when
whatever.
He gets to the brothel, Tommy Pett has been slit nape to nethers. So Lazarus goes to the brothel on his own. And when he gets there, Tommy Pett is dead. And he talks to that lady, and the lady is like, well, I'm going to die anyway, so I may as well tell you. Mother Heartsease is the one that's killing everybody. It's a warning to the other whores to not... Like,
she's
Marie,
also Lady Whitechapel.
She's the one who owns that brothel. And Tommy, like a freaking ding-dong, knew that it's Mother Heartsease that's doing all of this and that people were coming after her. And he tries to go and blackmail her. And then she kills him in that house. And so he does a little bit more running around. And while this is happening, in Temperance's point of view, everything's going fine. But apparently a woman came to the back door. Mary Whitson is missing because a woman came to the back door and was like, I need somebody to come help me get this child. And Mary knew everybody was busy and not paying attention to her. And so she decided to go on her own.
And sweet 9-year-old Mary wants to contribute. So she goes off with this lady and they figure out that it is a trap for Temperance put on by Mrs. Heartsease or whatever.
Yeah.
So he shows up being like, she's coming after you because she's really upset that like you hold so much power in St. Giles and like you're saving kids instead of buying them from her. And so she's going to fuck you up and we think she's going to do it through Mary Whitlock.
Yep. And so they go gallivanting to the gin shop, but Mother Heartsease isn't there, and it turns out she is headed back to the foundling home. So they run back to the foundling home, and as they get there, they realize it's on fire. And Mother Heartsease is standing on top of this burning building alone. And then the ghost of St. Giles appears, and he goes running into a neighboring house.
He goes acrobating in there.
And he goes up to get her, but they're like, we don't see Mary. Mary has to still be in the house. All of the other children are out except for Mary. So she's like, oh no, Mary. And then Lazarus runs into the building burning. What?
Well, and it
that was
says,
backwards.
yeah, the building burning. Yeah, no, but, and it specifically says that he looked and the look of devastation on her face when she realized that Mary was still in there is what prompted him to like risk his life and save this little girl. So he gets her and he like unties her and stuff and gets her, and then he pushes her down the stairs because everything's about to go. And the cat!
And poor Leah, she's holding on to a cat. And he pushes her down the stairs. He ends up falling through the stairs because Mary comes running out of the building. And she's like, oh my God, but Lazarus. And then Ghost brings Mother Heartsease out and hands her off to some footmen to like hold on to. And
to St. Giles.
To St. John. And then he just fucks off. And then Temperance, like a ding dong, bing, light bulb. Oh my God, I'm in love with Lazarus.
And he's dead. And so she's trying to go in there. Winter is holding her back. And then, because the house is basically collapsed at this point. Yeah. Doesn't Winter hold her back?
That's what I was just thinking. Because if Winter's holding her back right now, he can't be the
third ghost?
He's got to be the ghost, though, because we skipped over this earlier, but there's a scene where he, like, has a gash on his head and he's sickly. And who else would be the third ghost,
It's a team. I don't know. Maybe we haven't met them?
St. John, Winter, and
some other dude. Maybe
I don't know.
I can't. Of ghosts.
I can't look because the book has already been returned. Somebody, listener, if you have the book, go look at who is holding Temperance back. It's in chapter 20, chapter 19, the very end of chapter 19 when this would have been happening, or maybe the very beginning of 20. So like, there's your spot to go look. Please write us, message us, let us know.
I'm certain it's Winter.
Fuck.
I know, but he definitely is Ghost, and I think St. John is too. Anyway, so
Lazarus.
Okay. Wait. So then all of a sudden, because the Bucket Brigade is trying their hardest, everybody's like, he's dead. Oh no. And then miracle upon miracles, it just starts monsooning. And ends up putting that fire out, and then he walks out of the steam, like limping and carrying that goddamn cat.
Well, no, you can't see the cat. What he does is he limps out of the house, and he opens his cape, and the cat launches itself away from him. I was laughing so hard. And in his head, or he might even say it out loud. He's like, I fucking hate cats.
Yeah.
And then Temperance comes running up to him, and she's like, I love you, and I thought you were dead. I thought I was going to die too. I couldn't handle the thought of you being gone from this earth. And he looks at her, and he says, I would walk through fire for you, Temperance. In fact, I did walk through fire for you. And then they kiss, and then he tells her that he loves her too, more than life itself. We end up having this little scene where he and his mother reconnect. Lady Hero and Lady Care are the new patronesses, and they're already talking it. They're like, some of the children are going to go stay with Lady Care, and some people are going to go stay at one of Lady Hero's brothers' empty houses until they're going to build a house that has some land for the children to play. And they're just super excited about it. And Lazarus pops in and he's like, I'd like to be a part of this. So now they have two patronesses and a patron.
And she thinks she's so silly because she was just insistent in her mind upon this person being a man. Didn't think to approach a single woman in the aristocracy.
Yeah. Go to a woman of means, Temperance. That's who you need to go to.
Yeah. So anyway, either Winter was holding her back already, or Winter now pops in to be like, oh, I'm going to go take care of the kids over there, but I'm here right now. So go get in a carriage and go away. And then he proposes to her, and she's like, but we're not even,
whoa!
We're not of the same class.
Whoa! Back the fuck up, madam. They go to his house, and this is the scene where she's trying to cure him of touch aversion and the tie-up. And all of these things, and she succeeds. And magically, her touch doesn't hurt him anymore. Take what you want out of that scene. And then he's like, I'm not the man you would have chosen. And she's like, but you're exactly what I want, exactly what I need. You're honest and strong and fearless, and tells him all of these things that are wonderful about him.
And you see me for all of me, flaws and sins included.
And you make me face myself.
Yes.
Importantly. And then he says, will you marry me? It is after this scene. And she does all the stuff.
Yeah, she says, I couldn't possibly marry you because I'm not an aristocrat and all the business.
I don't even have a dowry. I have just the clothes on my back.
And he says, like, no, you've got the clothes on your back and you've got a really nice piano. It hasn't been delivered yet, but you got a nice piano.
She's like, but you gave me that piano. He's like, but it's your piano.
So?
Like,
yeah, that's enough of a dowry to marry me. And so they decide that they're going to be together forever. Amen.
Will you marry me and save me from a life of loneliness and uncaring, he says. And she says, I will if you'll save me from a joyless life filled with only work and duty. Happily ever after. And then there's that epilogue, and the entire epilogue is that baby that apparently Mickey left on Silence's doorstep.
Has to. Because Silence, her husband, goes out to sea in order to die for romance reasons. And I'm certain he dies.
He dies at sea. He's got to die. There's no way he comes back.
Yeah, he's got to. And then, yeah, there's a pounding on her door, and she goes out there, and it is a tiny baby. And she picks up that baby, and it's got a locket on it, a silver locket, and inside is written Darling. And so she names that poor, sweet baby Mary Darling. Instead of just coming up with a name.
The most hilarious part is earlier in this book, Silence was bitching about the fact that all of the foundling children were named Joseph or Mary, and then she does it.
Yeah. Anyway, and because she's all ruined, Winter is like, you should come help with this foundling house, since you got nothing else going for you now that you're ruined. And so she's going to end up that foundling house now that Temperance is going to be, spending time at sex clubs and stuff, Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So, wow, what a book. What a Dickens Times book.
Boy. Wow. Yeah, the birth of Dickens Times. I like that. It's accurate. I can think of a lot of different books that I've read that's a Dickens Times.
Yeah, and they're just a drag. They're still good, but fuck, dude. Dickens Times is rough. Mm-hmm. And it must have been awful to live in.
In reality.
How?
Oh my God. I literally, the other morning, I was literally laying in my bed when I woke up, just staring at the ceiling. And we're out of a heat wave, right? But I keep my house cold enough at night that I can sleep under all of the blankies that I like to be sleeping under. Because I like the weight and the cozy and the cold face, but the warm body. And I was just laying in bed, comfortable with the fan going, staring at the ceiling. And I thought to myself, I am so glad I live in a time with air conditioning.
I mean, seriously.
If nothing else. Just things like that. And books like this, really any historical that's not set in aristocracy. You know what I mean? A lot of the historicals where this is a legitimately impoverished heroine, and some parts of it are really intense and graphically described.
Yeah.
What life is like in St. Giles. And I just am so grateful that
And that's not to say that we don't have horrific bullshit and genocide and all the shitty, awful things that are currently happening in our hellscape. Mm-hmm. But Dickens Times is a very specific brand.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay.
All right, Melody. What's your lady love?
My lady love is microfiber gloves.
Oh?
Yeah. Microfiber gloves. So I have a lot of houseplants. I don't know if you know that. I have a lot of them. And I love them. And I name all of them. And it's a fun time over here.
They all have names?
Yeah. Yeah, you're looking at Bowser over there. She's the Monstera. I named my girl Monstera Bowser. That was fun.
love you.
Anyway, so yesterday, it was like my, every once in a while I'll do like a fertilize water and I'll clean off the leaves so that they're not dusty, they can photosynthesize better. It's all the things. But for a really long time, I was like using a paper towel, and then I'd have to I'd hold it with my one hand and wipe with the other. And then inevitably the dust would get everywhere somehow. And then, I felt bad for using so many paper towels when I shouldn't do that for shit like this and whatever.
Yeah.
So then I found microfiber gloves, and it makes everything so much easier because I just put on these gloves and then I can just pet my plants. I just pet them and I rub on them and I get them wet and I do all this stuff and I can get all the dust off with just the gloves. And it's the best. And then I wash the gloves and then I reuse them again. It's great.
It also means that you just get to pet your plants. There we go.
Yeah, I get to give them a little massage, So, massage your plants with microfiber gloves.
That's your lady love. You need please spell it in the show notes as massage.
Massage. All right, Sabrina, what is your lady love?
Oh my God. It took me a second to think of it because a lot of things are good right now. So I have a lot of lady loves and I just couldn't decide. And I did decide that my lady love.
You gotta start writing these down for the hard times.
I know.
I really need you to write them down.
I know. I was thinking about that the other day. My lady love right now is, you remember, I think this a couple of months ago, my lady love was, and maybe it wasn't a lady love and I just talked about it, but STORYGRAPH had added custom charts to their Plus subscription.
Oh, yeah. We can't spend a lot of time on it.
We're not going to.
I did get a dissertation on it before we started recording.
Mm-hmm.
So there's graph and tag stuff happening.
My lady love right now is so I wasn't a huge fan of it. The biggest issue a couple of months ago is that you couldn't edit the graphs. And I add tags all the time, right? I have 1,500 tags. Guess what, listener? You can edit the tag. You can edit your graphs now.
Oh, no. I'm so sorry. You forgot a step in between. STORYGRAPH listened specifically to Sabrina's request email, asking them to put the edit feature on there.
Did I email them?
Yes, we had a whole talk about it on the podcast. You emailed them to ask to edit the graphs, and so you manifested this.
I didn't remember that I emailed them. That's a very Sabrina thing to do. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I can edit the graphs.
And now all her dreams came true.
It's amazing. And even better, just one little thing that's even better. It used to be that to add a tag, you had to add that tag to a book to create the tag. So if I wanted to add tags just to have a nice cohesive list of tags for I don't know, eras, I had to choose a book to sacrifice and tag as a bunch of different things and then delete all of the tags once I'd saved them. And then there's 0 books in there, but the tag is created.
Oh.
Listener, you can create the tag directly from where you make the charts. And it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. So my lady love is graphs and charts on STORYGRAPH. And I'm so giddy about it.
STORYGRAPH Premium, free advertising. STORYGRAPH
Plus.
STORYGRAPH.
STORYGRAPH Plus. It's only $4.99 a month, $49.99 a year if you do the yearly subscription. And it's anyway.
That's the stuff.
All right. Keep being a badass and love yourself as much as you love having a name. Well, no, I'm not going to say that. I don't know if we have a listener with the last name Tinbox.
Bah! Keep being a badass and love yourself as much as you love just saving urchins off those streets, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
Love yourself as much as you love gallivanting around as a vigilante in a harlequin costume and a big red feather plume. Especially
if you're a team, like
it's got to be a team. It's got to be a team. You're right. It's got to
be.
Mm-hmm. It's got to be.
Because they definitely are. And so either they don't know each other and they all happen to go to the same Halloween store, or they're a team. And in Dickens Times, it's got to be a team.
Got to be a team. Bye!
Bye!
Heaving Bosoms is produced by us, Melody Carlisle and Sabrina Bradley. Editing is done by Melody Carlisle.
Our theme music is by the incredible singer-songwriter Brittany Fonts, and our art is by ultra-talented author Kate Pryor. If you like our show, remember to follow us on your favorite podcast app, rate us 5 stars, leave a nice review, and of course, tell all your friends about us, even if they don't read romance.
If you want to get in touch, you can email us at heavingbosomspodcast@gmail.com. If you want more of us, visit patreon.com/heavingbosomspodcast. You can also find us on Instagram at Heaving Bosoms, on TikTok at Heaving_Bosoms, and in our Facebook group, the Heaving Bosoms Geriatric Friendship Cult.
Head over to our website to sign up for our newsletter, get our Reading Embrace printable, and check out my audiobooks at heavingbosoms.com. All right, we'll be back next week with more swoons and snark. See you then.